Well, good morning, everybody. We are on podcast number 18. We are very fortunate today to have a longtime client and a great producer, and most importantly, a good guy. And that's Mr. Sam Williams from Coldwell Schmitt, which they dominate the Keys, really from probably just south of Miami all the way to Key West. And Sam is the smartest one in the family because he's right in the middle in a place called Marathon, Florida, which we've been to many times, Sabrina and I. And if we ever relocated again on the East Coast, we would be talking to Sam about coming to Marathon because it is a delightful community. And I'll let Sam brag about that in a few minutes. So, welcome, Mr. Sam Williams. Thank you for being part of the podcast. And we are glad you are here.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, I've got a bunch of questions I want to ask, and
Okay.
any that I ask that you're uncomfortable, you just go like this and we'll cut it out. Um,
Okay.
I haven't got one of these yet in doing
Okay.
18 podcasts, but you never know what's coming out of my mouth. So what the heck? So Sam, how long
I'm going to
have you
count on you to make me look good. So
been there you go. How long have you been in real estate now?
I've been in real estate 20 years now,
And how long with Brian Schmitt?
20 years.
Have you? So you started with Coldwell Banker.
I sure
And
did.
and it's amazing to me because Brian has the lowest turnover I've ever seen for a major brokerage. Um, and he has the best people to support that, which is people like yourself. So, what is the difference between Brian Schmitt, Coldwell Banker Schmitt, Sam, and the competition? What is the biggest difference?
We have extreme leadership from the top down, I always say Brian has put way more money into my pocket than he's ever taken out of it. He supports us in literally his entire focus is to help us make more money, to show us how we can make more money. He talks about it every day. He said it on our sales meeting this morning. And you cannot outwork our broker. He is if I had to compare it, I would say he is our Earl Nightingale, Mike, if I had to
That is
compare it somehow. Yeah.
I would agree with that. That's a real compliment. That's a compliment to both Earl and Brian because
And I
two of
mean
the
it that I
yeah
mean it that way because I just think about, you having the privilege of having grown up and being able to work around Earl, and I'm such a fan
yes.
of Earl. I've probably listened up, it's so much material there, and I always wonder about that, about that fact that you had the privilege of doing that, and I feel like I have somewhat of that in being able to grow up around Brian.
So the company now has what, four office locations in the Keys?
Actually, we just opened our sixth, so we had
Wow.
five. Yeah, and
Okay.
we just opened one in Cudjoe, which is number six. So we've got Key Largo, Isla Mirada, Marathon, Big Pine, Cudjoe, and Key West. We have about
That is
150 agents.
150 agents. So the turnover in a company like you're working in with Brian Schmitt, the turnover must be relatively low because the per person productivity is so high. Um, what kind of turnover do they have?
I mean, our average time for an agent here is 13 years.
The average length of time is 13 years. Wow.
Correct.
That's it.
Yes.
And you are 20 years, correct?
20 years. We have
That's
some 25. We have a 40-year agent. These I mean, if you're in the Keys, I know every market is different, but if you're in the Florida Keys, Coldwell Banker Schmitt is the number one broker.
that is
Um,
correct. That is impressive when you're working with a buyer or a seller, no question about it. So, production wise, is most of your business come from listings sold or buyer sales? How is that divided up?
yeah, about probably I think it's like 65 to 70% is listings sold, and
Okay.
30 to 35% is buyer controlled sales. And I would say out of that 35% buyer controlled sales, I don't know what the exact number is, but probably about half of those are double-sided listings.
Yes. So it's interesting. If I look at the list of the people we've done podcasts with, they're all like yourself, very successful, and they all are at about 70% listing sold. It is the most common thing. So for our viewers, if you're not a listing agent, it's probably time to commit to becoming a listing agent so we can be so you and I and Sam can have a more favorable conversation. No question about it. How many transactions will you do this year? What is your goal?
My goal, my goal
Yeah.
is 75.
And
Right now, I am, I think, what, 18 or 19 closed with like 14 pending, something like that.
so
Is where I'm at the
you're
first.
right on schedule.
Yeah, I'm close.
What is your average sales price?
My average sale price is 1.1 right now.
1.1 million.
1.1.
Good for you. That's great. And is that common for marathon?
Yeah, well, the average entry to the Florida Keys right now is 1.1. So yeah, that would be common. That would be fairly common.
That's interesting. So, what is the plan for the next 5 years for Sam Williams?
I'm going to sell real estate in this market until I retire. So, and I have no clue of what that retirement, I have I have not set a timeline or I look at Brian, he's 73 years old and he's still doing this every single day.
Yes,
And you can't outwork him. So, I like one time Lee Marcus said something that I just thought was a really great statement. He said, we're fortunate enough in this industry that we can build a business that we do not have to retire from,
that's right.
I believe that that is one of the many amazing things about this industry.
That is great. Lee Marcus is on the podcast one prior to this one,
I
so
saw it.
he will feel good that you mentioned his name. And that
I've
is
always hung on to that when he said it, and I mean that was probably like 5 years ago, but I've always hung on to that.
that is great. So, what do you do best as a realtor?
I would say lead follow up. I mean,
Is that right?
I'm gonna call you until you tell me to stop calling, and I'm gonna do it with energy and enthusiasm. That's kind of been my MO. That's really, what got me really seated into this business. And, now, we do things with, more purposefully and with more skill and training, and experience. But certainly the energy and enthusiasm and just my tenacity for lead follow up, I believe is, what sets me apart is I'm doing that every single day, relentlessly.
So, if you took Orlando, Florida, which is a very active real estate market also, and a seller is going to sell, they make a decision quickly, pick a realtor, or the realtor picks them, and they get a contract signed. Um, I've always felt that in the Keys, that process is a little bit slower. And it is, first of all, would that assumption be somewhat correct? Because I don't want to assume the wrong.
It would be. It would be. I mean, even with, past customers, a lot of times they're preparing, they're not going to be down because they don't live here. These are second homes. So like you'll have an initial phone call. You might go visit the property without them there, and then you're going to do your market analysis, and then you have to have another, a lot of times another meeting with them or a Zoom meeting or to go over documents in marketing and everything else. So a lot of times it is a two visit approach. I would love to say that it's a one visit approach, but and sometimes it is, but a lot of the times we do have to do two visits.
So the Keys is very water oriented because it's a little skinny peninsula. Um, what percentage of your transactions are waterfront, or is that common?
Oh, yeah, of course, especially in the Middle Keys. Gosh, I don't know that exact number, but if I had to look right, it's going to be the majority. I would probably say somewhere around 70% is going to be waterfront.
Wow, that is a lot. Um, that highway is 2 lanes most of the way and 4 lanes part of the way, going from
Correct.
Miami to Key West. Um, Does that interrupt the transactions that take place in terms of speed and efficiency? Because the access to the keys is very limited.
Mike Ferry Events, where top producing agents get sharper. The original real estate coaching. Get registered today and invest in yourself.
Yeah, I would say it depends on, how far you're going in your trial. Like I really try to focus on the middle keys. So my focus is from Long Key to 7 Mile Bridge, which is, maybe a 15-mile span. So
Yeah.
I'm typically not going that far most of the time. Like I'm not gonna like go to Key West. We have a great office in Key West. We have great
Yes.
agents there. I would just be much happier referring to one of those great agents that can, protect the interest of the customer, down there better than I would. Here I can protect your interest on the Middle Keys. I know it better than anybody. So that's the way I feel about that. So for me, nothing's really more than, 10 or 12 minutes away.
Wow, that is great. That really condenses the activity level and gives you a real chance to score at a much higher level, no question. So 1.1 million average sales price, you do 75, you're making substantial income, you're in a tax-free state. How much better does it get?
It's a good state. I love Florida. I do.
Because that tax free, we have that in Nevada also, as
Right.
you're aware. Somebody said to me, "Why did you move to Nevada 20 years ago?" I said, "Zero tax." Yeah, but why did you move to Nevada? I said, "Zero tax." Well, what does that have to do with your business? Everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's for
I,
sure.
I, I say I still think we pay for it. We pay for it in our insurance rates. We pay for it in the cost of living. They're
Of
they're
course.
taxing us. So
Yes.
they're getting
No,
it one way.
no question. So what is, if you have a weakness that you're always working on fixing, what would that sales weakness be?
My sales weakness would be not be, I've always, and this has just been with every coach I've had, but they'll tell you the same thing. Getting out of my transactions, I still have a habit of being in there. Just it's been very difficult for me to get 100% out of that, and that cost me being able to make all my calls and just it cost me time.
Do you prospect daily? Or do you prospect 3 days a week?
No, I prospect five. There's not a day that I'm not making calls, and I do even a little bit on Saturday. So there's not a day that goes by that I'm not making some calls. If I had to say sitting down in front of my dialer, I would say 4 days a week. But no matter what, you're making calls on the road as you go in between appointments. So there's never a day you're not doing lead follow up and talking to people.
How big is your database?
I've got about 3,300 people in there.
Wow, that is terrific.
Yeah.
How do you stay in touch with that many people?
And I'll separate that. So between past customers and SOIs, there's about 2,200. So a lot of that is, everything is set up these days. All the lead systems aggregate into there. So all buyer leads spill into that base. But yeah, about 2,200 would make up my past customers and sphere of influence.
That is great. Um, is the company advocate that you all follow this kind of a prospecting system?
Yeah, we actually do. We even have they call it a Fire Up Friday. So every Friday we do our own prospecting session, and everybody gets on a Zoom and they track the phone calls and the appointments set from those phone calls and the business done. And it's been a really great program, especially for a lot of our newer agents. Which, if you are a newer agent, I mean, again, that goes back into this is such a great company to join because we have management and staff and leadership that not only provides the tools, but we train you and help you and use them with you to get you going and let you see other agents in your office doing the same thing. So they really have a strong example set here, and you can lead you can be led by it.
That is great. Um, the average prospect takes how long to a seller prospect how long do they take to make a decision to list with somebody? I would think it would be a longer period of time than, say, Orlando or Fort Lauderdale.
You know, I feel like lately, the sellers, a lot of them can see, you know, the changes in the market, and I
Yes.
feel like I feel like the last few of them have been like, okay, we really want to get this on the market before it's too late, you know. So
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of, I sense a little bit of shift there right now because they're, you know, nobody down here has to sell. But again, if you see that the market's even in a soft decline, you know, unless you plan on holding for a longer period of time, it just makes the most sense right now.
What percentage of your total transactions are second homes?
Probably about, I would say probably about 70%. Probably about
Wow.
70. Yeah.
So would they generally be people that live in the South, or would they be
All
people?
all of our business is almost 100% domestic. We have very little foreigners buying in the Keys. They buy up in Miami and Fort Lauderdale a lot, but this
Yeah.
market has never really attracted that buyer base. You know, so international buyers, I think it's less than 1% of our transactions are international. So it's all domestic, and in prior to COVID, it was really the entire East Coast, like Michigan down the entire eastern seaboard. But now, I mean, we have Midwest, California, Colorado, Texas, you know,
Wow.
just Wisconsin, Minnesota, all those northern states. They just it's really, and then of course our largest source of buyers has been and always will be Miami-Dade and Broward County, which is our neighbors to the north right here.
So, as you know, we kept a second home in Naples, Florida
Yep.
for 8 or 10 years. And at that time, it was a nice high end area that we lived in. There were 12 homes in the neighborhood, and, they were expensive. I'll just
Right.
put it that way.
Sure.
And it was so interesting to me because we were the only ones from the West,
Oh,
because our
wow.
primary, our primary residence that time was Southern California before we moved to Nevada. And it was interesting because, they almost said, why would you come here? Why wouldn't you go to Mexico? I said, because I'm not Mexican. It's not complicated. So um, it was interesting to me that how uh, I'm trying to think what the word would be, that people stay together when they move. You know, the Smiths moved from the Carolinas to the Keys, and they end up taking, over the course of a couple of years, 3 or 4 of their friends and neighbors that come to the Keys. Is that still a common trend?
Yeah, and so most of the buyers here, they have they're buying here because they have a connection here. They've either been coming out
Yeah,
here since they were kids, they have friends or family, or they grew up, or they just there's always some type of connection, or they just really like the water, and the diving and the fishing is
yeah,
important to them. So you're buying that second home, especially in Marathon, the Middle Keys market. We're allowed to do vacation rentals. So the Middle Keys the rest of the county is a 28-day minimum, where Marathon allows to a 7-day minimum on rentals. So we're the only key that, besides Key Colony Beach, which is inside of Marathon, that allows those 7-day rentals. So you can actually do those short-term rentals, which is a huge way to just greatly offset the cost of ownership. So now you can have your place in the Keys locked in. You can have your stuff already there. It's easy for you to get back and forth, and you can rent it out the rest of the time that you're not using it. And people really like that about this market.
interesting. Well, you live in what we would say is a great vacation spot to visit. Um,
Yes.
when you live in the Keys, where do you go on to vacation?
Yes. Well, we went on a cruise. We went always another subtropical climate, it seems like. So it's kind of funny how that happens again. I think people go where it is like that.
Yeah, because you're in a little slice of heaven and everybody wants to be part of that, which is fun. So
I'll tell you, I go to San Diego once a year. I go to Vegas once a year. So my vacations center around superstar retreats and production retreats.
that is great. We appreciate that, of course. You've been in coaching how long?
I want to say 13 or 14. I want to say 13 years. I think I joined in 13, I want to say.
Okay. And has it been a generally good experience?
Yeah, and I've, talked about this on stage a few times. I owe, just between my broker and MFO and all the people that I've met in that process, it's what keeps me signing up every year, and it's what keeps me, that monthly fee for coaching is just something we just don't even blink at it anymore. It's just valuable, and we value it. So yes, my whole family values it.
That is great. You're married.
Mm-hmm.
It's only been a few years, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Getting ready to have my 4th anniversary at the end of this month.
Say it again.
I'm getting ready to have my 4-year anniversary at the end of this month.
Oh, that's great. What is the date?
April 30th.
April 30th.
Yes, sir.
Serena's and my is May 5th.
Okay. So, all right. Right there.
We're neighbors.
Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, that's right. That's fun. So I've got an audience of 500 people in our space, and you and I are going to do a 2-hour seminar together. We'll go back and forth on topics and let the audience ask questions. And of course, somebody puts up their hand and said, Mr. Sam Williams, what is the most important thing you can ask me to do to be successful and reach your level of production some point?
Man, that's I didn't prepare anything for this segment. I just I knew you were going to ask me questions like that. I guess I would just have to say, find a leader, find a brokerage, and that's going to provide the leadership for you that I feel mine has, and just show up, just get involved. You always say all the time, it's our job to find a buyer and a seller, and to just get in the middle of them, just get involved in that, just get involved, and start talking. You don't know the paperwork at the beginning, but you're going to keep reading it, and you're going to keep fumbling your way through that. And if you want to, if you truly want to, if you have a desire to figure it out, you're going to figure it out. And other than that, I would just say you got to talk to people. I mean, that's just probably the number one thing that I think is not told to newer agents when they're getting ready to embark into this industry. Is this is a direct sales business. You've got to talk to people. That's he who talks to the most people wins. So that would be and learn the inventory. If you're in a market, go start scouting that inventory, learn that inventory so you can communicate it to buyers and sellers intelligently, and that's going to get you well on your way.
Most agents scroll. Top agents study. Follow Mike Ferry on all platforms and think like top real estate agents do.
Well, you mentioned talking to people every day. That seems to be one of the big hangups in our industry. There's no accountability in most cases. Nobody's watching what we do. So sitting at our computer, looking at pictures is not going to bring me buyers and sellers and transactions. So how do we avoid that sitting at our desk playing with our computer?
You're gonna have to have a schedule, and you're gonna have to be filling that database, talking to people, putting them in that database, and then you're gonna have to go call them once a quarter, and you're gonna have to stick to that. And you should, if you're smart, get some type of accountability, which is what I love about coaching. So you get a coach to hold you accountable, to make sure that you make those calls, you're reporting to that person every week. And I started this business with a buyer's agent mentality. coaching, it took 3 years of coaching to shift me to a listing agent mentality. And that was the other number one thing that changed the trajectory of my life, to what we do today, is just understanding that listings are the name of the game, and making sure that that is what you're thinking about every single day.
One of the questions that people have been sending in after the podcast is viewed is, what is the personality style of blank, the person I was interviewing? Your personality style be categorized?
I've always been, this has been a topic lately, but I was always categorized as an expressive on my disc assessments and everything. But all my role play partners think I'm a driver, so I get a little bit confused there on which one. But and my broker thinks I'm an analytical, so I've always thought I was an expressive. So that's what I've always thought.
So you're like most realtors. You
Yeah.
are who you need to be at the time of making a presentation.
Correct. Yes.
Because I would have said Sam is an expressive, a driver backup, and very, very, very much analytical, is my impression.
Sure.
But, the more personality styles that they see in a person, the better chance the person has of succeeding, because you've displayed a lot of versatility to get to that point. So I want to say we've been talking now for 27 minutes, which is, the time flies when
It
you're
does.
having a good time. So we'll see you in June at the Superstar Retreat.
We will be there in June. Actually, I just booked my plane ticket yesterday, so we will see you. And it's always a pleasure. Anytime that I can do something to give back to your organization, I'm always happy to do it.
Well, we really appreciate your attitude and your energy and your loyalty, and we will return all of those to you in getting this podcast out to the world to see. So, Sam Williams, thank you. We appreciate you a lot. And folks, thanks for watching today. We will see you next week.
Get your West Coast Superstar Retreat ticket today and discover the fastest path to higher production. Click the link in the description below.